Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another fantastic episode on the Unleashing Potentials podcast. My name is Bernadette Desir, and I'm your host. And joining me today is Donna Temm. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much, Bernadette, for having me.
You're welcome. I was telling you that you're my first guest since my break because I took a break from podcasting.
Yeah, and I'm happy to be that first guest. I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to it today.
Yeah. So, how was your summer, Donna?
Great, actually. I am in a new place. I did a 1,000-mile move, and it was last May, at the end of May. And so I kind of just swam through last summer. And now this summer, it's really the first summer that I'm here, and everyone said, "Oh, it's going to be really hot where you are. You better be prepared." But I am absolutely loving it. It has been so nice to just be outside, enjoy the weather and learn about all the places around here. So it's been great. How about your summer?
It's been great. We had some wildfires, smoke, and it's been scorching here and there.
Oh,
Overall, I think it's good, to rest because I got burnt out pretty good. And we do live in a busy, hostile society. So I enjoyed resting.
good
Yeah.
for you. And good for you for taking that time to rest
It was
and,
so hard.
recognize. I bet it was.
Yeah.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you
Yes.
recognize it. And, that's part of what I see in my work with individuals is that they just are always go, 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 go. And they're caught in that success trap and they just don't have the ability to get out of it. And the next thing they know, they're not fulfilled, they're feeling burnt out. And then sometimes, not always, but there can be other issues that come up, like health issues or relationship issues. So, you were really smart to
Yeah.
take
Thank
that
you.
time for you. Yeah, absolutely. And welcome back.
Yes. Happy to be back. Thank you. Yeah. So,
You're
Donna,
welcome.
let's get to know you a little bit. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I am Donna Temm, and as I explained a little bit, I am the owner of Donna Temm Alternative Solutions.
Mhm.
And right now, you're going to chuckle because I say right now because it's ever evolving, which you probably know. But right now, and I have been for years, working with high achievers and high performers who are caught in that success trap. They just are feeling like they've set goals, they've attained them. They have found themselves very successful, making the money that they want to make, having the businesses that they want to be in, and running them the way they want them, but there's something missing, right? They feel like, I don't know why I should be happy. I should be over the moon. Look at all I've accomplished. And yet I'm not feeling fulfilled. And so I work with them to find out what's really going on. Why is it that they're really not feeling fulfilled? And I work with them in different ways. And that can be from, I was an educator first before I started my business 20 years ago. This next month, actually, September, I will have been in business for 20 years. But I was an educator and I was in the public school system. So I have 18 years under my belt of that. And so everything I do kind of takes that education and weaves it through. And so basically, what I do with these individuals is we look and see what's really going on and we empower them. We
Mhm.
look a little bit deeper. We can look deeper through a logical process that I have called fundamental mastery,
Mhm.
or we can look a little bit deeper through more of an alternative solutions type of thing. And that's where the niche kind of comes in, and I create that niche there because we don't just look at the normal things that people would look at. We go a little bit deeper. We dig in a little bit of a different hole than we would typically look into. And then we find a way to really see where they're at, where it is they want to be, and we bridge that gap.
Mm.
And yeah, it's really fulfilling work for me.
Yeah.
That's where I
Yeah.
found my fulfillment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love what you do because at times we can be blinded by materialistic stuff and not take care of the physical being that we are. I
Yes.
always give it an example. It's like having a car. Yes, it looks very nice on the outside. What is the condition of the inside? Is it clean? Is it maintained? If it doesn't have gas, where is it gonna go?
Right, right. That is such a
Mhm.
great analogy. And I think that's the thing is that when we're running out of gas, when our tanks are low, that's when we really can't just muster through and make it look all shiny and new, right? We start to it starts to show on the outside, it starts to show in our relationships, it starts to show in the things that we are willing to do and not willing to do. It starts to show
Mhm.
in the quality of anything that we do. And so, it's such an important piece. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yeah, thank you too.
Mhm.
Can you tell us that you always want to do the work that you're doing now?
It's funny because I could say yes and I could say no. I think when I was young, 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 I used to always play school, right? I used to always pretend that I had my students and I had them filling out papers, and then I would actually correct them and give the big gold stars and everything else. And so I knew that there was probably going to be education in my future. The other thing, though, that I did sort of gravitate to before making the decision to actually become a teacher at first was veterinarian, because I have a love for animals.
Mm,
And then also a nurse. I was looking into maybe becoming a nurse. And so, when you look at those two things or those three things, they all have that common aspect of let's help people. How do we help people? How do we get them from one place to the next? And
mhm,
so I think, to answer your question in that way, it would be yes. I have always wanted to do this. And I think because I've had the opportunity to be a business owner, I
mhm,
just feel so fortunate that I have been able to really be my own boss, to be able to see a need
mhm,
and fill it, to be able to notice something in someone and be able to then do what I believe might be helpful for them, and
yeah.
without the mandates of, top down or being told I needed to do this when my heart really said I need to do that. And
Yeah.
that's part of why I left the educational system, because it was at a time where there was a big shift. And I'm not saying we didn't need the shift,
Mhm,
but at times I was, or more often than not,
mhm,
felt like my head and my heart weren't in agreement. And
mhm,
so I was just being pulled. It's like, okay, I know I'm supposed to do this in my head because I'm being told, but in my heart, it's just not what's best for those students. And so that was why I left and went out and started my own business. And so
mhm.
it just has evolved into a way that has allowed me to continue to do what I love and what I've always wanted to do. And that's empower people, help them to get from where they're at to where they want to be.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for sharing. And I think
Mhm.
you leaving, you knowing that you had to leave, I think it's a testament to the woman that you've become. And at times it's hard for us to know when to leave something. I think we stay in something to get approval from others, and we feel empty on the inside because there's no more joy there. Would you agree?
I would completely agree. And as a matter of fact, it was either yesterday or the day before
Mhm.
where I've been doing these. I'm doing right now a series on YouTube, and it's
Mm.
called Reconnect to Your Inner Nudges. And it's just a really
Mm.
quick thing that I put out there. I do it, literally do it myself. I sit down in my little meditation room and I say, okay, what is it that I need to know from me today to be the best that I can be for others?
Mm.
And then I'll go through the process, and then I turn on my camera and I share it with people, and I explain it. And one of the things was exactly what you just spoke about.
Mm.
And so I believe that there's so much that we can do when we go through certain things that we can then help others. And I can't remember, am I answering your question?
No, it's all right.
I
I
kind of
enjoy
get off
listening. I
on
like
these
learning and
tangents. Yeah,
listening.
but what was your question again? Because I want to make sure I answered that specific one. Do you
Mm-hmm. Oh, I
remember?
mentioned that you knowing that it was time for you to leave.
Right, 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 right. Thank you
Yeah,
for that reminder. I go everywhere and I'm like, make sure
that's
you bring me
okay.
back around to the circle, right? So many things. And that was one thing that I talked about is boundaries. And for me, sometimes I have a hard time with boundaries.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, how do you know when you need to really like sit it out And you need to just get through the muck because on the other side, you know that there's something really good and valuable and that there's a lesson there for you. And
Mhm.
then on the opposite end of the coin, how do you know when it's like, okay, this is just not healthy for me or anybody else connected right now?
Yeah.
And it's time for me to go. And
Mhm.
so, yes, I completely agree. And I feel like that was the point that I got to. And what the moment was for me, like that moment of realization, was as a teacher on like the first couple years, we would all go and we'd have a full staff meeting, workshop day.
Mhm.
And I remember being in the front, kind of in the front rows with everybody so excited, kicking off another school year. And I would hear these veteran teachers in the back. And as they were talking about something new that they were going to be, incorporating into what we do with our kiddos, the people in the back were like, here we go again, something new again. They're just going to have it come, it's going to go. They're going to make us do all this work, right? And I thought to myself, oh,
Mhm.
if I ever become like that, I'm out. Like, I'm not going to be doing this, right? So
Yeah.
then fast forward, like, 17 maybe years later, and I'm sitting there and I hear myself saying it. Like,
Ooh.
oh, here we go again. And I knew, like, okay, Donna, this is your little trick here, your little tip here,
Mhm.
out. And that's when I ended up leaving. But it was a hard decision because I loved it and I loved my students. And
Mhm.
that's a thing about making changes in our lives, instead of just jumping, we really need to take that time to dig deep into why do we feel like we need to jump?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's running away and
Mhm.
sometimes it's running to something, and we do need to jump, but
Mhm.
we need to know why. There needs to be discernment there,
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
you said earlier something about we're living in some tough times and
Yeah.
volatile times, that,
Yeah.
that type of thing.
Mhm.
And we are, and I think that there's a lot of fear.
Yeah.
And I think that when we're in fear mode, of
Mhm.
course, is that, as we always say, fight,
Yeah.
flight, or freeze, right? And I
Yeah.
think that that's what we're seeing right now because people are just jumping. They're just not sure what to do. They're afraid. And so they're jumping. And in the meantime, we're forgetting about the other person
Yeah.
and what's happening with them.
Yeah.
And so I think it's so important, this work that we do, you with your podcast, me with what I do.
Yeah.
I think it's just so important to help people because I honestly believe that people don't want to be that way. They don't
No.
want to hurt other people.
Mhm.
Other people are sometimes just collateral damage of, of what they're going through. And
Yeah.
so if we can help one person feel
Mhm.
better, and not be in that horrible place of fear, then that's going to make such a difference on that ripple effect of everybody else that they come into contact with.
Yeah. 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 Thank you for sharing. I think it's hard to ask for help. It's
Yeah.
not that we always believe it. That's what we're told to believe. And that's how we get programmed by the culture, by society. And we don't want to be the black sheep. We have to fit in. To fit in, we must sacrifice who we are to be part of the culture we want to be in.
Yes. Yeah, I
Mhm.
agree. And I think part of it is choosing wisely the culture that
Yeah.
we want to be in.
Yeah.
Because if the culture that we want to be in doesn't align with us, then we're going to have to give up a lot of ourselves in
Yeah.
order to fit in there.
Mhm.
And in the end, it's not going to do anyone any good. There's going to be, again, lack of fulfillment or worse, and it's just not going to help. So I think, again, we go back to that discernment about what is the culture that will let me authentically be me,
Mhm.
that I can integrate the best parts of myself,
Yeah.
but then they are actually going to help me with those parts that aren't so great, that might be a challenge that I could use the support with.
Yeah.
But it is a hard thing for support, because I think that as somebody who wants support, we
Mhm.
might sometimes think, okay, how am I going to look? And is it going to look like I'm weak?
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
that's not how I want to look.
Yeah.
And then there's also support from the person who needs to give it.
Mm.
Number one, do they have it in themselves right now to give support, or are they too taxed? And
Yeah.
number two, how do you give that support to someone so that you are helping them, but not enabling them,
Mm.
right? You want to empower them. You don't want to do it for them. You want to
Mhm.
be able to bring them through that process. So,
Yeah.
it's support is such a big piece. And that's one
Yeah.
of the 7 steps that I have in my fundamental mastery processes is getting the right support at the right times
Mm.
from the right people and
Yeah.
knowing when to implement those.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Can you tell us more about the 7 steps? Now I want to learn more. There's
Oh,
7.
good.
That's
Good. I'm
awesome.
so
Yeah.
glad. Yeah. Yeah. So it's actually 7 steps with 2 additional components.
Okay.
And I call it the SASSY process. It's fundamental mastery is the program. And the process that I use within it is called the SASSY process. And it's
Mhm.
SA to the third power,
Mhm.
SSE. And
Mhm.
the first S stands for self-reflection. That will lead to the first A, which is awareness.
Mhm.
Once we have the awareness, that will lead to the second A, which then brings us to aligning our third A, which is actions. And then once we've done that, then we look for support. Because if we are trying to change from where we are at to where we want to go,
Mhm.
we're not used to that. So if we take the same actions, we're going to get to where we've always been going. We need to take different actions. But when we take different actions, when we get triggered, we're like, wait a minute, nope. I usually do this when I'm triggered. So
Yeah.
we need that support. So we look at different ways you can get support. And then we look for signs. That's the other S. We look for
Mhm.
signs. Is
Mhm.
it actually working? Is it bringing us closer to where we want to go, or is it taking us further away? And if we're further away, it might not be a bad thing. It might be like, oh, we thought we wanted to go here, but
Mhm.
look, we're going here and we're pretty happy about that.
Mhm.
And then the E is evaluation, and you have to evaluate, and it's an ongoing piece throughout the whole thing. The
Mhm.
2 additional components is we get what we call a targeted area of priority. So we call
Mhm.
it a TAP. And that component is when we look really deeply. A lot of people will come to me and they'll say, you know what? My life's a mess. And they truly believe
Yeah.
that every aspect of their life is a mess. And
Yeah.
so I have them fill out what a lot of people use, which is usually a balance wheel where we look at like 8 sectors of your life and we fill it out. I have them fill it out based on satisfaction. And their balance wheel sometimes does show 3 or 4 of those 8 areas that are really low in satisfaction.
Mhm.
But the encouraging piece is we look at it and we say, look, though,
Mhm.
this is family, this is finances, and this is career. And
Mhm.
those are your 3 lowest. I'm just throwing that out there. But
Yeah.
those are your 3 lowest. Can you see how they're all connected? And
Mhm.
people are like, oh, yeah. So
Yes.
when we work on one of them, which is their targeted area of priority, let's say it's finances, right? Then that all of a sudden they're going to see improvements not only in finances, but then their family life is going to improve and their career is going to improve. So it's such a beautiful thing sometimes when people come in and they think they're, not that I want them to feel this way, but they
Mhm.
think their lives are such a mess. But then when they see that aha moment, like, okay,
Mhm.
it's not so bad. I just need to pick an area of priority and everything else is going to probably fall into place. And
Mhm.
then the second component, so we've got the targeted area of priority. And then from there, we work on creating a goal or a desired outcome.
Mhm.
And so from there, that's really our foundation. What is it that you really, really want? We use a 5 point rubric to make sure that it is clear and concise and a quality goal.
Mhm.
And then everything else is based around that with those 7 steps.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I love that. I think
Yeah,
I've used all of the methods you've mentioned somehow without realizing that
absolutely.
I'm using them. I've had to
Absolutely.
ask myself, with the podcast, it's scary when we put ourselves out there. There's always
Yes.
people who will judge. We will never do it their way. To them,
Yes.
we're doing it wrong. But it's scary to stay in the fight, a fight that we know we will at times lose, but winning by losing as well.
Right. I love that. I love how you said that. And you know
Yeah.
what? It's funny because I was just interviewed for another podcast for my nonprofit organization, the Donna Temm Trauma Support Foundation.
Mhm.
And he, at the end, said to me, "Is there anything I didn't ask you that you wish I would have?" And I said, "Yeah, I wish you would have asked me if I'm afraid." Because guess what? I am, right? And that's the
Yeah.
thing is that,
Yeah.
we have these fears and
Hmm.
it's like, okay, we've got to really look at number one, where are the fears coming from?
Yeah.
And number two, are they really legitimate fears that we're going to let hold us back?
Yeah.
Or is our reason, like, we all talk about the why, like, why do we do
Yeah.
things?
Hmm.
And is our reason, is our why enough to keep us moving forward through those types of things that you just
Hmm.
talked about, where you're going to have judgment? You're
Yeah.
going to have, all of these different people saying you should have done it this way. You're
Hmm.
not doing it the right way. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, are we being true to ourselves?
Hmm.
Number one. And number two, are we doing it from an intention that we want to help? We want to be a positive force in the world. And so
Hmm.
we know we're always going to have naysayers. It's just what it is. But
Yeah.
if we can find that reason and we can know that we're safe, if we're not safe, that's a whole other thing. That's
Mhm.
something we need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I have a history, a background of trauma, and
Mhm.
I've written
Mhm.
my book about it and everything else. And so I really feel like it's really important for us to look at that.
Yeah.
But if there's no imminent danger, if we're not hurting anybody, but we're really trying to bring someone up or help in the world,
Yeah.
and we're aware of whether we're not doing that, we're like, ooh, we just didn't do that the way we
Yeah.
thought we were going to, and it might not be helpful, then we need to look at that. But, other than that, I always say to people, look, this right here might look
Yeah.
brave, and I
Mhm.
am brave,
Mhm.
but I might look like I've got it all together. I might look like nothing really bothers me, but on
Mhm.
the inside, it's like there are my own fears. There are things that are going on,
Yeah.
but I have skills. I have
Mhm.
skills of how to work through it. And I
Mhm.
also know my why is a really strong one. And I'm brave and I'm courageous. And I rely on that bravery
Mhm.
and that courage to push me through and get me to the other side if I feel like it's that important for me to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Tell us more about your organization. Were you impacted by some type of trauma or traumas that, ignited that passion in you to do what you're doing?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So my organization is the Donna Temm Trauma Support Foundation, and they are just about done with the website. So we're all legal. We've got everything, all the legal paperwork is done.
Mhm.
The website should be done very soon, and there will be a podcast coming out about it, as well as I'll be included
Oh, yeah.
in a book as a chapter
Mhm.
focusing on me and the nonprofit organization. So I'm super excited about all of that. I've got people that are coming forward to help to get it started, to get it going. Because, when I started, it was it was something really near and dear to my heart and still
Yeah.
is. But I was like, ooh, this is a big job.
Yeah.
Like I've got my for-profit business and then I've got my nonprofit business. It's a
Mhm.
lot of work, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade it for the world. And I think talk about having to ask for support.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
I've been like, I'm not really sure I know what I'm doing. I know
Yeah.
what my intention is. I know what my actions are to start, but I don't
Yeah.
know where it's all going to go. And so, yes, please help.
Yeah.
But it's so exciting. And so what it is actually, I had childhood abuse. And I repressed the memories for years. And when they
Mhm.
came out, they came up fast and furious.
Yeah.
And so it was a struggle.
Mhm.
And I had to decide, like, is life really worth it? Sometimes people get to that point where
Mhm. Mhm.
it was really, really traumatic.
Yeah.
And the answer was yes, it is.
Mhm.
And so once I finally said, okay, like you are going to get through this,
Yeah.
you are going to heal from this. Your
Mhm.
whole reality of what you thought your life was has just crumbled to pieces, but you're going to pick it up and you're going to keep moving on. and you're going to be even better in the end. And so that has always been, I think, part of my compassion for people who are either the underdogs or who have had trauma. And when we talk about trauma, yes, it is abuse, like I had sexual abuse, but we know that with that comes the physical abuse as well as mental emotional abuse. And so, but trauma can also not only be about that, it can also be about chronic stress.
Yeah.
That can bring on trauma to the body. And, accidents or grief or shock or loss and death. I mean, all of those things bring on trauma. And so when we were putting together this nonprofit, I really wanted to do it in a way that, yes, we want to be able to help people who have had, abuse trauma.
Mhm.
We also want to leave it open so that other traumas, if somebody needs help, we can help them and we don't close ourselves off. And
Mhm.
so we're doing it in a little bit of a different way,
Mhm.
where we are going to be accepting donations and raising money. Some of it will be through, the sale of my book, You're Only as Your Secrets, as well as some resources. I have a complimentary companion workbook that goes along with it. If people want to work through their own stuff as they're reading through my book, they can use that. And so
Mhm.
all proceeds from that will go toward charities as well. So we are going to be choosing a charity a year. I think we're still at the beginning stages of it. But
Yeah.
the intention at this point is to choose a charity a year and then raise all of the funds and then be able to give that to them.
Mhm.
And then they can help the people who they work with using that money. Because I always say I like to stay in my lane. And what I'm good at, I'm good at, and I will own it.
Yeah.
What I'm not good at, I'm not, because I don't
Yeah.
know it, or it's not something that I want to dig that deep into to get to know it.
Mhm.
But these individuals who are running all these charities and these other nonprofits, and
Mhm.
sometimes on small, small budgets to
Mhm.
help other people, they are in the trenches with these individuals.
Mhm.
They are the ones who know best what these individuals need. It's almost like if somebody needs gas in their car and you're giving them oil. It's like, okay, well, that's very kind
Yeah.
of you,
Yeah.
but it's not solving my problem, right?
Yeah.
So, that's kind of what we're doing with it. We're looking for charities that we can give the money to, and then they can
Mhm.
use it as they see fit for
Yeah.
what their individuals
Yeah.
need.
Oh, wow. I love that. I love that because
Thank you.
trauma comes, you're welcome. Trauma comes in so many shape and so many different ways. I've talked about trauma and I will continue to talk about it. I
Yeah,
will continue to learn about it because I think the more that I think I know about trauma, the less I know.
that
I
is
just
such a
don't
true
know
statement.
because
Yeah.
I'm in my own mess. Right? There
Right.
are resources. I like that you mentioned, when something comes up, it's fierce. That's been me, not only recently, but throughout my life, throughout trauma. I think I have it under control, but I don't. It's like a beast. I suppress, I put the lid on, but when it comes out, it's over and I have to
Yes.
restart again. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. But you know what? You have the skills now. If you think about now when it comes out and it spills over, which it does for all of us. I mean, I have been doing self-help stuff for myself. I've been doing
Mm.
self-help stuff for other people for
Mhm.
years.
Yeah.
And still we get triggered,
Yeah.
and I feel like this is something that it's almost like and I have to choose my words very carefully because I want people to know who have been through this, like myself, like yourself,
Mhm.
that we are a force for the world,
Yeah.
whether we think so or not,
Mhm.
because we breathe,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
Just because we're breathing. Because trust me, there have been times when I almost didn't make it. I had a near-death experience at the hands of the abuser. And that is literally loss of life, loss of breath.
Yeah.
And, everybody who has this trauma that is still putting one foot in front of the other, we
Mhm.
are a force of resilience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And whenever I speak, that's what I want people to hear from me.
Mm-hmm.
But I also, think that people need to hear that they're not going to be that force in full force 24/7, 365, and
Mm-hmm.
that there are going to be triggers. But each time that we are triggered and each time that we are slammed down once again, for whatever reason, in whatever way,
Mm-hmm.
we get up.
Yeah.
And we sometimes start to see we get up quicker because we know we've been here,
Mm-hmm.
we've done it, and we know what has worked for us.
Yeah.
And if we find that we're getting stuck and we're not getting up as quickly, then that's a clue to us to say, we need something different this time.
Yeah.
Let's get the support we truly need for this time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think that is such an important piece for people
Mm-hmm.
is to cut themselves some slack.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
they have been through hell, most of them,
Yeah.
and they're still decent human beings who love,
Mm.
care, who help others, who
Yeah.
put themselves not first a lot of the times. And, you
I
know,
can relate.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially when
Mm-hmm.
it comes from our kids, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
always joke, I'm like, you know what? If I'm in one of my ways where I'm not being the kindest person that I want to be, and I'm behind the wheel, because that's the first thing I want to say is that I want to be transparent. I'm not this wonderful be all end all. I'm not. I have my stuff, right? And behind the wheel, it comes out. And
Yeah.
but I joke. And I can be like, I can be saying something under my breath or screaming it in my car with the windows up or whatever if somebody cut me off and mad at that person. But I also know myself that if, 3 miles down the road, that
Mhm.
person is having struggles,
Yeah.
I'm going to be the one who's going to stop and help, or one of the ones who's going to stop and help. So, you know what? Even though we sometimes look like we're not at our best, there's still good inside there. And we need to remember that.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Based on your experience, what are some key symptoms that, someone can look for, whether it's in a family member, friends, or coworker, that they are actually struggling? Because at times I think we're really good. I'm also really good at it, if I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Of bearing the pain and pretending everything is okay when we're falling apart.
Yeah. You
Mhm.
know, I always say this, there are signs.
Yeah.
And if you're paying attention, you're going to see them.
Mhm.
Signs are different for everyone because we all have our own coping mechanisms. We
Yeah.
all have our own survival tactics that we've learned from a very young age.
Mhm.
And for me, in my book, I have a chapter that just talks all about that because when I wrote my book, I didn't want it to just be about my story. I wanted it to be a learning. I wanted it to be a guide. It's called Sexual Abuse Awareness,
Mhm.
Prevention and Intervention, right? That's the tagline for it. And that was my goal. I wanted it to be a source of awareness. And so in one of the chapters, I talk about all those different types of things. But the biggest piece for me is if you've got that gut feeling like something's not right with someone,
Yeah.
don't just discount it. Don't
Mhm.
just put it aside. You
Mhm.
don't have to be like a bull in a china shop being like, I know something's wrong, even though you're not
Yeah.
saying it.
Yeah.
But you can be that compassionate ear. You can drop those little hints, those little one-liners. You okay?
Mhm.
All right. Because I just
Mhm.
noticed that, typically you're this way, but I haven't
Mhm.
seen that in you. I just want to make sure. And, you do know that you can talk anytime, right? And sometimes you're like, you're going to get this closed off. But
Mhm.
the more that they
Mhm.
hear it, the more they're going to start to begin to be like, gosh, and they're going to start to take it into consideration.
Yeah.
Because you and I both know that when someone has been abused, their life has literally been on the line.
Yeah.
And if an abuser is threatening
Mhm.
with killing someone or hurting someone that person loves,
Mhm.
they're going to be pretty darn quiet,
Yeah.
right? They're like, I am not telling this secret if it means my father's life is at stake or
Mm.
if it means my siblings aren't going to be okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to zip it because that was my story.
Mm.
And, but I think that the more you can be that person that is sort of like pushing against the beliefs that they're hearing from the abusers or that they're feeling from whatever it may be. It might not be abuse, it may be something different, some different type of trauma.
Mhm.
But even if it is, even like, let's say it's chronic stress and somebody's just heading toward depression
Yeah.
and they are just at their wits' end,
Mhm.
they've already got these tapes going on in their head. And so by us saying, you can talk to me and it will be confidential and I'm not going to be pushy. You do know that, right? Yeah. Okay, great. And even though they may say that, we're still pushing against what that belief is that they have in their head. And
Mhm.
eventually that can wear it down. Now, if someone's in imminent danger, then certainly you've got to do something a little bit more.
Yeah.
You've got to go to someone who is an authority,
Mhm.
who knows what to do, who is a professional, and who can really take this individual out of the situation they're in, no matter what it is, and give them the help that they need. And
Mhm.
sometimes that's when we need an intervention, right? We need it to be a
Yeah.
little bit more forced.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is, again, this is a hard one and you have to use your gut because
Mm.
you don't want to be setting off any alarms that aren't really true. But if you do feel like there's something, then you do need to mention it to someone who
Yeah.
has the ability to maybe take it that next step for
Yeah.
getting them the help. And
Mhm.
again, like I said, and this is the biggest piece that people say to me
Mm.
is, what if I make a mistake and I cause more of a problem than there was?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, but
Mhm.
what if you don't at least take one step and there was really a problem when there could
Mhm.
have been an early intervention?
Yeah.
So it's not an easy thing. And there honestly isn't a right and a wrong.
Mhm.
There are some rights and wrongs, of course, but for
Yeah.
those of us who are really trying to be um, intentional about it, we're
Mhm.
just doing the best we can with what we have.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share that we didn't get to cover?
Oh my goodness. Do we have 4.5 minutes? I really feel like this has been such a nice discussion, right? Not
Yeah.
even an interview. I love that. And I want to thank you for that because, that is part of you and that is part of your gift to be able to make it feel like this is a safe place to have these conversations and to make you're very approachable and to make me feel like, yeah, I can talk about these things and I can bring this up. So thank you so much for providing that for me and all of your podcast guests. And
Yeah.
and I'm so glad you're back. And I'm so glad that you took time for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad you're back because I think what you do makes a difference. And I
Thank
hope
you.
you see that. I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
Um, and when you take time for you, this is hard stuff because, like you
It
said,
is.
you do
Yeah.
talk about trauma.
Mhm.
And when you're in it all the time, I know because I used to be in the trenches and now I do more of the training. I
Yeah.
train others of how to use my methods with other
Mhm.
people because I needed to get out of those trenches for a little bit
Yeah.
because it's heart work. It's not only hard work, it's heart
Mhm.
work. And it as individuals who care deeply,
Yeah.
it impacts us, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for that. And thank you for all you do. And thank you for holding this space for me today to be
Yeah.
able to tell my story.
Yeah, yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for gifting me with your story, with your passion, and with the difference and impact that you're making. You're making it
Thank
across borders. I'm in Canada, you're in the States, and we're connecting.
I
And
love
somehow there's resonance and there's healing and beauty and all of it. So thank you.
yeah.
Before I let you go, though, I have two questions for you. You
Okay.
ready?
I'm ready.
First
Ready.
question, what is the meaning of life for you?
Oh, I love that connection.
Mm,
For me, the meaning of life is connection
mhm,
in a positive way,
mm,
recognizing others, regarding others, being recognized, right? A two-way street,
yeah.
being regarded, finding those small moments. I don't need big things. I don't need lots of things. Are they nice? Absolutely. Would I take that? I would. But when it comes down to the nitty-gritty,
Mhm.
it's about connection and love and people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why you do what you do so well.
Well, thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome. Yeah,
Yeah.
last question for you. Where can people find you and work with you?
Sure. Yeah. So I have a website,
Mhm.
www.donnatemm.com. There's a contact page there. I also have an email address, donnatemm@gmail.com. I make it pretty easy for people to find me. I am on Facebook. I'm on YouTube under Donna Temm Alternative Solutions.
Mhm.
I am on Facebook,
Mhm.
all kinds. So, anywhere, and soon I think it's going to be DTTS Foundation, Donna Temm Trauma Support Foundation.org.
Yeah.
So people will be able to look there,
Mm.
and find out more information for my nonprofit as well.
That's amazing. Well, Donna, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank
Yeah.
you for who you are, what you do, and how you do it. And keep shining.
Thank you so much, Bernadette, and right back at you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.